Here we go. All
Hey,
right.
Brock.
It just says we're okay. I got a new update. Hello everyone. Are we live to YouTube? I think some people were watching on YouTube and some people weren't able to get through, so I've just kind of rebooted. I'll give you a brief update if you haven't caught the beginning of this stream. I'm here with John from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Oh, you got it. I think I hear you through. John, you got to turn off. You got to mute your YouTube. I think we're getting a feedback.
No, I should be off. Okay. How's that?
All right, I hear my. That's funny. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for putting up with the technical difficulties. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Dick here. I'm here with John from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. We've been talking briefly about his bike history and the fact that he is quarantining due to a positive COVID test in his basement there in New Jersey. We've been corresponding over the past couple months on email about bikes that he was interested in. John was telling us previously that he saw my SV650 video from Suzuki and that he started getting interested in looking into bikes there. His first bike was a recent bike, which was a 2020 Honda CB300R, and he said, I'm interested in the 650. I'm interested in what you have to say. What do you think about the 650? And then you were looking at some other bikes because, when you start looking at one bike, John, you inevitably start looking at other bikes and you go quickly down the rabbit hole. And so what other bikes were you looking at the time?
Sure. So, anyone that's making a natural progression from a 300 level CC bike you would go up to a 650 range or a 700 range. So I was interested and intrigued in the Yamaha SXR 700. I like that retro style. And then just really kept finding that I was gravitating towards more the naked upright bike. And so I knew it was apparent that the MT-07, the SV650, the Z650 were going to be probably the main three that I looked at. And that's when I bounced them off you of which one you thought might be best for me. And when we started talking, so that was probably around September, before my sights got turned on the new entry of
Nope,
what
nope, nope,
we'll talk
nope.
about.
Yeah, don't give it away.
Yeah.
I gave a little teaser intro to the title to the video, so we don't want to give it away too early. But you mentioned the MT-07, or I guess previously called the FJ-07, or the
FZ.
YZ, the FZ. Sorry, the FZ-07, which I think is actually a pretty good for the North American market. It's a pretty good moniker because I have an FZ-06 from the early to mid 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and that bike was a cherry of a bike, and the the FZ line kind of lost its flavor, kind of lost its mojo for a long time. And when I rode the MT XSR versions over here in the UK, I said these bikes are the closest things to the old FZ bikes, the old phaser bikes. So when I saw that they shared the FZ moniker, at least until most recent, I think it just changed it to the MT for 2020 or 2021. They're calling it across the world the MT-07.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is spot on to. It's very accurate them calling it the FC because it has that. It is a very very unique bike, and it is a very cherry of an engine. And did you get to ride the MT-07?
I never did. The downfall with COVID was that most of the dealers around here had limited inventory based on the fact that there were limited customers able to come in and actually see them. They were pretty much all closed down, except they had their front doors open. You could come up and buy parts or have servicing done, but they weren't allowing you to go into the dealerships. And so their inventory were limited. Now, just about a month and a half ago, they did open back up in New Jersey. I was able to go into my Yamaha dealer and I sat on the MT-07 and fit perfect. I'm the perfect person for these companies to build a bike around because I'm the medium, Mr. Medium. I'm 5'9", I'm 160. I'm an athletic build. So, the MTO
What's your inseam?
30,
Okay, all right,
30 and a half, something like that. Yeah.
yeah. So I
It's,
rode the MT-07 a couple years ago now, and I was really interested in riding it because the engine is so amazing. But I was what I found uncomfortable about it.
mhm.
One, because they were marketing. I don't know if if they market it in North America or if they're still marketing it here, called the Dark Side of Japan.
Yes, they do.
And okay, and so I think that's whoever came up with that marketing scheme is spot on because it is a very brutal bike to ride. I see a lot of young guys riding this bike and pulling wheelies on it, and it is very much a naked sports bike. My and I'm not turned off by that. I really enjoyed the liveliness of it. I mean, you could see it's got like 74 brake horsepower for a 650, essentially a 700, and it's got 50 foot-pounds of torque, which is reasonable. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's a reasonable amount of torque. But the wheelbase was I felt the wheelbase for that engine was so short
Hmm.
that I felt that the wheel was coming up behind me the whole time, and it
Hmm.
felt very much like those old dastardly cartoons where the cars would rev up and then go, and and I felt like I would get into a lot of trouble if I bought that bike. And
Hooligan.
interestingly, yeah, it's a
That
hooligan bike. Yeah,
that's the term I
it
hear a
feels
lot.
yeah, it feels very much like a hooligan, which is funny because when the other, if we go back to the SV650 and we look at those specs, the SV650 very close in terms of specs. It's only
Hmm.
3 foot-pounds of torque less. It's 70. It has actually more. Um, it actually has. Oh no, it's about the same. Oh, a brake horsepower more than the MT-07, but for some reason, and the wheelbase is almost identical.
Hmm.
And because I think the wheelbase on the MT-07 is about 55 inches or 1400 millimeters for my metric friends, and the SV650 is 1420, so 50, just nearly 56 inches. So wheelbase, power, height,
Hmm.
not all that different. You could tell they were either these companies were looking at each other when designing these bikes,
Hmm.
and the Suzuki is so much more manageable. And maybe people might come down and say, "Well, you're riding a triple versus a V twin." Uh, you can really rev that V twin. I mean, I think you have to get to 8,500 RPM to get to the peak brake horsepower on the Suzuki, and I think it's 9,000 RPM on the triple. I'm sorry, not triple, on the MT-07.
Right.
So the so you have a parallel twin versus a V twin. V twin should be a bit torquier.
Hmm.
It's not. So I couldn't reconcile the MT-07 versus the parallel twin of the MT-07 with the V twin of the Suzuki, of why the MT-07 felt so much more unwieldy. Did you have a chance to sit on or ride an SV650?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Never found one. The only Suzuki dealer that's close to me didn't have any in inventory at all. So
Well, it's funny.
I was gonna
Go on.
actually, I was gonna buy one, and it was near the top of my list, just on the Vortex and your review, and I figured that it seems such to fit exactly the way you described about how fun it was, that it was really at the top of my list.
Yeah. Well, message in a throttle just tells me, corrected me because I think I called the MT-07 a triple at the beginning, but yeah, it
Right.
is a twin. Yes,
Twin.
message in a throttle. You're right. It is a twin. I was thinking in my head because in my train of thought I was about to talk about my experience on the XSR 900 because that too was called, I think, the FC09 before they changed it to the MT moniker, and I was going on that. But yes, the MT-07 is a. I think I corrected myself.
You
Is a
did.
twin. But so then the other. But what's funny is I grew up in Jersey, and my first couple of bikes were purchased in Jersey, and I bought the bikes without being able to ride them because back in the 90s and the early part of the century, you weren't allowed to test ride bikes. They didn't even have demo days, and they kind of looked at you weird, like you were asking, could I ride this bike? It was almost a thing where you couldn't even sit on the bike unless you put a deposit on it. So I'm I don't know if that's still the case, but also you mentioned this only Suzuki dealer near you didn't have any. It's funny. I think first bikes for at least people my age and growing up in New Jersey and New York and stuff was your first bike was whatever the closest dealer was because there wasn't any this was early internet days and there weren't as many moto vloggers and reviewers and you didn't have as much information at your fingertips, so
Sure.
you were kind of just going in and saying that looks good, and and in America, anything under 1,000 cc's is a girl's bike, so it was like, you kind of limited to what you can either afford a Harley, and if you can't, you go looking elsewhere, and it's whoever the closest dealer is, and so
Right.
it was. It's interesting because I haven't purchased a bike in the States for a while, but to hear you tell about your experience of I wasn't allowed to sit on one. I definitely didn't ride one. It's not. It might sound unusual to people who are living in the UK or elsewhere where demo rides are very customary, and it's not unusual. But
Yeah, I was allowed to sit on the Honda. They would not let me test drive it. And this is being a first bike experience. My reaction to the salesman was, well, I have automobile insurance. I have a license, a motorcycle license. You won't let me take out a bike I'm going to buy. He's like, nope, liability. This is just the way they do it.
yeah, well, I don't know if you watched any of the videos of when Fanny was looking for her bike, but
Yes,
she had the same issue where some people were like, "You haven't had your license for 2 years. We're not going to let you demo your bike." And
right.
she said, "I've had my license for nearly 13 or 14 years at the time, and because I'm just getting my UK license, you're thinking I can't take this out." So, you know, it's an interesting thing because you're buying something that is potentially, if it's the wrong bike for you, it could be dangerous. So
Mm,
think about liability. You're selling me a bike that I could kill myself on. We want to talk about liability.
right.
But I can feel for you in your shopping experience in Jersey, looking and during a pandemic, looking for the right bike for you. So, but
Probably like
then
kind of like dating.
yeah,
Even though
yeah,
I'm married, but my nephew is late 20s, and he says it's very difficult.
it's a new world. So you actually, the other bike you said you looked at on our email chain was the Z650,
Hmm.
and
Which I
the
did get to ride. They
you
had a
did get to
demo.
ride.
Yeah, they had a demo day about 5 or 6 weeks ago out in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, and test drove the Z650. And again, got on that within 2 minutes. I said this bike was made for me. Ergonomics, handlebars, foot pegs, feet on the ground, comfort, power, and that really I got off that demo and got off that bike saying this is probably the bike I'm getting, and then just for the proverbial shits and giggles, I test drove the Z900,
Yeah,
and after about 2 minutes, I said, "Oh, I couldn't figure out why anyone needed that much power. I'm not going on a track. I will never push this bike to maybe 80% of its capacity. So why I just couldn't, in my mind, at this stage of my game, why anyone needed that much more power than the 650. But obviously, there are people that have that skill level, that have that need, that power.
yeah,
But that was scary danger power is the way I was thinking.
yeah. It's a lot of bike. I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny too because I've had the good fortune of trying all three of these bikes, and you know what I thought about the Suzuki. I never actually posted my MT-07 video because after I posted my Tracer 900 video, I got some comments that kind of made me think I said as much as I needed to say about these MT bikes or this kind of this version of bike, and I knew that my perception there's a big cult following to the MT-07,
Hmm.
and that if I came out and said what I wanted to say about it, it just at the time maybe I didn't know enough about it. I needed a second ride on it, and but the first ride was never good enough for me to want a second ride on it, which is why I'm happy that the T7 is out, the Tenere 700 is
Hmm.
out
Hmm.
because that engine I think is amazing, but I think with the longer wheelbase and a different riding position, I think I would love the engine in that bike. a bit different than the configuration of the MT-07. But when I rode the Z650, I felt the same way about the Z650 that I felt about the MT-07, where it was a it was a hooligan bike. It was, I mean, it fit me well, but I forget. Does the Z650 have rider modes on it, or there's no rider modes on the
No,
Z650?
no,
Yeah,
right,
that's
no.
the 900 that has the rider
900
modes.
does.
Yeah,
Correct.
so I mean, I think that the Z650 and I'm sorry, and the MT-07 would benefit from at least one rider mode
Hmm.
because of how visceral it is. And I think out on the highway or some twisty roads, fun as hell. If this is your only bike and you needed to pull double duty or triple duty, like you want to commute to work on it or you want to go on a Sunday ride with someone who doesn't have something as sporty, I think the power is just so direct and
Mm.
so immediate that even if it had just like a rain mode, I know I'm sounding like a wimp here, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of vitriol for it, but I think I found that the 900 version of the Z900 or the Z950 or whatever it is,
900.
and the XSR 900 were better bikes than the 650 and 700 versions in that line because of the rider modes on them. Because you
Mm.
had this progression that you could ride them at different levels. It wasn't so twitchy. It wasn't all about the power. It wasn't all about
Hmm.
riding. I think I would definitely own an MT-07 or a Z650 as a second bike, or if we're going, to do some fun riding. But I probably wouldn't have it be my only bike. And that's funny because when you look at the specs against the SV650, they're pretty much all the same, but the S650, perhaps because it's a V twin, is much more of a usable bike across the range, and it seems to have two lives over a certain RPM, where
Yes.
it's manageable at the low RPM, and then when you get up to the peak power RPM, you find that hooliganism.
Mm.
So it's so after the Z650, were you said I'm really close to buying one.
Yeah, I then first had to figure out what I was going to do with my bike, and I said, well, I'll probably just wait till the spring or the summer coming up, and just for the uh, to put it out there and see the interest in it, knowing that obviously with if I'm had a plan to sell a bike because the CB300R, I was going to grow out of that bike at some short period of time, and I wanted to look at something that I was going to grow into. So if I knew I was going to sell it, well, the longer you hold on to it, then the next models come out, and then if I put more miles on it, then I'm just seeing less and less that I'm going to actually be able to sell it for. So I happen to list it on a Facebook marketplace page locally here in South Jersey, and that was on a Friday. Saturday morning at like 6 in the morning, I got an email from someone in Ohio that said, "Can you go start it up for me and video it?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, I'll take it." So that was at 6 in the morning. I woke my house up a little bit with the engine in the garage. And then by noontime, he had Venmoed me the money and had a truck at my house to pick up the bike in
So
six
you
hours
you posted it for less than you
a
should have
day.
then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yes.
you should have asked for
Or,
more money.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's always a balance of do I did actually have it listed for a few days earlier before I had put it on this page and had no interest, and put on Cycle Gear and had no interest. So I think this bike fits. There's a big following of the CB300R, and this guy knew exactly what I wanted. He wanted one with low miles. He wanted one fairly new, and I was happy with the price I got, and he took it right away.
Yeah. Well, it's good. Congratulations, because sometimes you get it in your head that you want a new bike, and you have to sell. You have to move on your old bike, and then you're sitting on your old bike for a while for whatever reason, and
Right.
especially during a pandemic. But God bless the internet and motivated
Exactly.
buyers, because and it's funny. I mean, when you bought the CB, was there what made you what was the thought process to getting into the CB other than I'm a new rider, I want something that's not going to kill me, because there's the KTM 390, there's the Yamaha MT-01 or something, or
The
or
the three,
the MT3. That's right.
three.
Yeah. So
Well,
what pushed you towards the Honda over the others?
basically not being able to test drive any of them. The KTM, I don't, the orange colors are not me, so it just threw that right out. They don't deviate really much of the colors of that. So I did a lot of reviews, saw a lot of reviews on the MTO, the CB300R, and they were just phenomenal. Everyone had said, great handling bike, easy to learn on, plenty of power for a single cylinder. And so seemed like pretty good first bike, and was very happy with it. Still think it's probably the best, if not one of the best beginner bikes that anyone should learn on, because it's just so nimble and easy to handle and plenty of power.
And how did it fit you compared? Like you said, you got on these midweight bikes.
Mhm.
How did the CB fit you?
Identical. They're
Oh, okay.
basically all constructed that the same 30 to 31-inch seat height,
Yeah.
and ergonomics are all about the same. This is a very light bike. I think it's might be 315 pounds wet. So just pretty simple, very, very easy handling bike.
Well, I think because my screen is showing uh, the previews of the other images, that I may have, for the people who have attention to detail, may have revealed what you put your deposit on. So why don't we get to let's get to the meat of the conversation. You you looked at the Z650. You were going to
Right.
put money down. You rode it. I mean, that probably had a lot of convincing power behind it, because you actually got to ride it. And that,
Correct.
when you demo a bike, you get to feel it. And if it feels good, there could be a million other bikes that are good for you. But if, it's the experience being on the bike that convinces you to put the money on the barrelhead. So when you went to put a deposit on something, after you sold your bike to the guy from Ohio,
Hmm.
you got the 650, right?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I Yeah. So what I ended up doing was, and that was the launch. That was pretty much about a month ago. It was the world launch and the Trident, and then the Tenerife world test ride, where I'm surprised that you weren't invited to go to.
Are
Um,
you? I'm
as
always
the
surprised when I'm not invited to go to places to ride bikes. Yeah,
uh,
it's it's shocking that I'm not jet setting everywhere and getting free buffets and hotel rooms and flights to try new bikes out, especially the
you're
Trident.
you're an influencer. I was surprised you weren't there. Um, so Trident Triumph comes out and launches this new bike, and I said, "Whoa, hold the presses. What do you mean it's coming out with basically the same price as all these three other bikes here in the U.S.?" Now I think it's different in the UK. It's amazing how pricing, comparatively speaking, of the dollar is different, but at least they're all similar here in the U.S. So I was
Yeah,
intrigued.
well, if I could interrupt
Yeah,
you,
go ahead.
just to give a little context to people who might be watching, the SV650 in the UK goes for just under 6 grand.
Okay.
The Z650 goes for 65, just under 65. The MT-07 goes for just under 67. And if you, I mean, some people might be saying, why not get a inline four CB650R if you're looking for something like that? Different nature bike. I love that bike. I have a video if you guys want to check it out. That's 7 grand. So in turn, and I think the Trident's coming out just at around 7 in the UK. So what is
Hmm.
it going for? What did you agree to pay for?
Right. Well, you're paying the MSRP right off of all of their websites, but there's no discounting any bikes. I thought that I would bump it off one dealer to another, and they said this. They said the same thing. They basically, hey, I have the same costs, and it's not going to save you anything. So don't drive the extra 40 miles if you think you're getting a better deal here. But so I guess the USD to the pound, the difference is about $1,000 difference. So all these bikes, the Z650, the SV650, are about $7,400 US. The MT-07 is about 7,700, and the Trident is the two base model paint schemes are 7,950. So this one list that you showed here, the one that I like, the black, is you pay an extra $100 for the black with the big white Triumph. So it was about $8,050.
And so this is the one you're getting, the kind of the Bond style paint job with the oversized logo and the blacked out engine.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
It's a good looking bike. I mean, I much prefer it to the pre-launch Ghost bike that they were advertising. I don't know if the people in the marketing department in Triumph realize that there's a whole memorial to fallen cyclists where you paint a bicycle all matte white and then you put it on the spot of where they've gotten killed in a traffic accident.
Oh, wow.
To see a Triumph as a ghost bike made me kind of worried that, that this might be a death wish waiting to happen. But what's funny is when you had mentioned in one of our email strings about looking at the Trident, and I had said, Triumph has a mixed history with new models and having bugs, especially with their electronics. And there's a batch of T100s, I think it is, that have gearbox issues. I know there's software issues on the Scrambler 1200s. I've seen a number of the Street Twins sidelined on the side of the road in London because of electronic failures, and they haven't been able to start them up and stuff because of wiring harnesses being in the wrong places, steering heads and things like that. And you kind of think, but they'll have worked out these things because they're kind of notorious, and that hopefully a new model won't have those same issues. But the Scrambler 1200, arguably, other than the new Tiger, is one of their newer models, and they're still having those kind of niggles. And I said, well, why would you take a plunge on a bike sight unseen, and why would you take a plunge on a bike that may, against all odds, have some issue, whether it be gearbox or electronic? It does have styling cues towards the Speed Twin, with a bit of Speed Triple thrown in. And so I'm wondering what your thought process was after looking at very reliable Japanese motorcycles and coming as a North American too, because the North American Triumph dealership makeup is essentially there's an arm's length relationship with their importers, and their dealerships kind of are a catch-all to foreign bikes that don't have a huge international dealer footprint. So it's kind of like MotoGP here that imports stuff from China and India and elsewhere, and it's a catch-all, and Italy to some respect. So I'm wondering what your thought process was there, John.
Well, you enlightened me about a number of things that I wasn't aware of right there. So you put a little lump in my throat. But
well, I did email you. You didn't see.
Yes,
I wrote some of these things in the email, so it shouldn't be.
Yes.
I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. But
no. I was look, the package of what this bike is offering just put it head and shoulders for me to just set it aside. The fact that it has two ride modes, sport and rain, the fact that it's a triple, and that the torque has been tailored to, basically, as they say, it's through the whole rev line, basically.
Yeah, it's
I'm not
2,000 RPM lower than any of the others.
Yeah, I'm not looking.
max torque at 6,000 RPMs as opposed to 8 and 9,000 RPMs. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah.
I'm not looking for high end speed. The fact that that there's LEDs on all over the bike, that it can't self canceling turn signals, the TFT display. You're getting some of these high end features that you need to go well over $10,000 to see some of these features that they've put standard.
Yep.
I really had no reservations about the Triumph with knowing the legendary bikes that they make, and have really liked that speed triple for. I've watched a number of videos and people riding them, and I know the quality is going to be there. If hopefully if there's any bugs that my deal is fairly close to me in Philadelphia, it'll get taken care of. But that could happen with any bike if. But yeah, there's certainly some.
Agreed. Yeah.
There's certainly some more confidence in less issues with the big three Japanese. They did make this bike with such a high maintenance intervals. I think it's 10,000 miles on the first maintenance, which is phenomenal.
Next question: what did the dealer say after break-in? What did they say that service interval would cost you? Because long service intervals are great as long as they're not trying to make up for the fact that it's a long service interval, and then they're going to charge you what the intermittent service intervals would have been.
I really, honestly, I don't even know. I mean, I haven't been to the dealership. I haven't met them. It's over been emails so far, and I'm kind of worrying about that stuff later.
You're in a honeymoon period. I think you make a lot of good points. I mean, when I first saw this. When I tried the Speed Twin, and I had made some comments about how it looked a bit 90s, and how they're trying to play this game between their street triple, speed triple side of the company and their heritage line side of the company, and that the Speed Twin is them coming to grips with, if you will, who they actually are. You could be, the current Triumph is not the Triumph of the 60s and the 70s. It's a rebirth it's a new company.
Clearly.
And if you, of all the heritage stuff they make that looks like the old Bonnies from the 60s and 70s, it's not the same Triumph. Mm-hmm. So it's almost as if it's not so much of a caricature as the early Indians were, the early new Polaris Indians were, but it's definitely a caricature or a reference to something that is not them. But if you look at their early Daytonas or their early Tigers or their kind of 90s bikes, that I think is their heritage. Triumph, this current iteration of Triumph, that's their heritage, where they live. And through all of this kind of heritage stuff that's come through, it's creeping back in to what they started as. And when I said to the Speed Twin, it's almost like they're coming to grips, or they can't deny who they are. This is the end result of them not being able to deny who they are. I mean, look at that tail. That tail end of that bike is 90s all day long. And I think I was attracted to this bike because of that tail. A lot of people will say that tail is ugly, but I think you and I are reasonably close in age, where the 80s and 90s were big design influences for us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you look at a bike like that and you're like, huh, that's a good looking bike. And so it has the round headlight, it has kind of the Speed Twin tank that's kind of cantilevered forward. Mm-hmm. Design, but it has that lovely arched swing arm. It has kind of a squat look to it. So it has, elements to it that are very much 80s, 90s, but still communicating this kind of neo-heritage style thing. What's funny is it looks a lot to me like the Honda CB600R. Where
650, yeah.
The 650R, where shy of those big wings that the Honda has, it's one of those things where it's a neoclassic as opposed to a classic looking bike.
Yeah.
But you make a lot of good points, because the fact that it has rider modes, the fact that it has a TFT display, those things are at the next level of bike. They're in the 900s or leader bikes that when you're getting those features.
Yeah,
And I think
they've pushed this game to a higher step. I cannot foresee that the big three are going to just stay as is when they see, which I anticipate this bike to pick up a tremendous amount of the sales, where people looking at the same bikes and relatively same dollars, and just unless you have that love for the MT-07, it's going to be hard for people to turn away and take an SV 650 or a Z 650 when you're getting much bigger bang for your bucks for not much more.
yeah, I agree. I think the thing too is when you stand next to a new Triumph, because they don't weather all that well, but when you stand next to a new Triumph, there is a real sense that it looks like it's a quality item.
Hmm.
So when you put that next to a Japanese bike of the same class, if you will, there's people tend to crane their neck towards the Triumph. So I can understand the allure. I would love to follow up with you once you own it and see
Sure.
what the owner experience is like. Because I think in one of the emails when we were talking about the Trident, I said, let someone else take the first generation one and learn from them and see what kind of niggles they are. I'm not wishing you any niggles, so knock on wood that it's just a perfect experience. And I know I've heard of the Philly Triumph dealership as being a stand-up dealership where they
Hmm.
honor they there were some people I think who've made comments and they've said that when there was a warranty issue they dealt with it without a hiccup. So I think you picked a good dealership in terms of my experience with Triumph dealerships, and the fact that they're so close to you, and the fact that you've said I'll take it sight unseen. I think there's a lot they have a lot riding on this bike to succeed, especially in America and
Exactly.
especially with that midweight, trying to break into that Japanese um, market share. So I wish you luck with it, and but I will use you as my guinea pig because part of me wants one of these in my fleet, but I'm not going to be one of those guys who buys the first one. So I'm glad I know you, John, because it's something that's kind of piqued my interest, but I'm also interested in how it feels when you sit on it because my issue with the Speed Twin was how they narrowed the seat
Hmm.
and the side panels hit me right in the thighs where I was trying to kind of stand over the bike and that was a bit uncomfortable. This looks a bit narrower where I'm looking at it, and there are a bit of cutouts. So I'm hoping that they've addressed that in some way. But it's very exciting whenever someone gets a new bike. And so you put a deposit. This is the next. This is probably the next and one of the last questions I have for you because I don't want to keep you too long. But I'm always wondering why people put deposits on things. Like someone's like pre-order this movie that's gonna come out and so and so. Why would I pre-order a movie when I'm gonna wait to see it? Or is there a limited run available in the states, or is this color a special edition? Why would you put your money down on something that you can't get right away?
Well, that's a good question. That this is what they're stipulating. You want one that's coming in the end of January, early February, their first time frames. You need to put a non-refundable deposit down. So otherwise, if I go to them in January, I don't think they're getting 50 of each color in. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna, they probably are gonna get maybe a half a dozen at most. I don't even know what the numbers are, but if you want to reserve one, pay
So
up.
it's a pre-order. They want to know what they're selling before they kind of speculatively bring in a certain number of bikes and
Correct.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All
Right.
right.
And I'm
And
gonna I'm gonna actually, so to allow you to follow on with this, I'm actually following your footsteps a little bit. I off of eBay I bought it, a little GoPro setup, and I'm going to record as they're wheeling out the bike, and I'm gonna video my ride home for the first experience.
nice, because I was going to ask if you figured out the motovlog because I'm really interested in that kind of immediate one of the things a lot of people ask me, like you would ask me what equipment I use, and the other question you get as a motor vlogger is, do you write a script or do you have some sort of premeditation of what you're going to ride? And some of the criticism is, oh, you came in with preconceptions and you didn't know you knew you weren't going to like the bike before you rode it. And I can say in all honesty that everything I say is a reaction to what I'm experiencing, and I think it's a good idea from the dealership to home. Take the long way. Don't rev it too high because you're still in break-in.
Right.
It's interesting to get that immediate visceral, almost like it's a first date. You're getting to know your bike. You're getting to know. They could show you what all the switches do and run you through the TFT and all that crap, but ultimately you have to take it on a date and take it for a dance and see if you get on with each other. And when you have a mic in your helmet and you're like, oh shit, it's those oh shit moments that you really get to understand the new bike that you have. And I think
that's what I want to capture.
Yeah,
I want to capture in my memory of while I pull away and I have that emotional, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is incredible. This is
yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing. And I think because the bike's so new, and if I just throw it up on YouTube, I think a lot of people are going to want to say, hey, what's it like driving that thing home?
I'll definitely watch, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are interested in this bike. And what's funny is when they launched it, I don't know what the launch or the pre-launch was. I don't know what the pre-launch was like in the States, but on Instagram here in the UK, they had the white bike in the kind of obscure photographs, and then they ended up putting that camouflage skin on it as they were driving it around, but the camouflage skin had the word Trident and Triumph on it. So I don't know whether they were really trying to camouflage it or whether they were just kind of playing that game like, ooh, something's coming. And it was a bit confusing, a pre-launch marketing of it. But
I think they're doing it now in the States. They're taking, if you go on the Triumph website, at least you can see all the dealers that it's moving from the Northeast down through New York into the Midwest, and they're taking the travel tour. Okay. They did not get it to Philly though, for some reason.
Why? Yeah, they probably think, oh, it's too close to New York. We did New York, so we don't need to do the rest of the Northeast.
Yeah.
Little do they know how many bikers there are in southern Jersey, Delaware, Philly, and the rest of Bucks County.
Right.
So yeah, but I'm really excited for you, John, and I really appreciate your time tonight. It's always exciting to get a new bike, and it's always exciting to talk to someone who goes through a certain process. We were saying before we started live that most of the bikes I have aren't on my short list because they're all impulse buys. So I'll have a short list of bikes. So you asked if I had an XSR 900. I don't yet, because every time it's on a short list with the SV650 and a Himalayan, but I don't have those. I don't own those bikes because I'll walk into a shop and be like, oh, I'll take that one, and it's never been on the radar. So one day I'll have the bikes I've done research on, but it's so I can understand an impulse buy, and I can understand your impulse buy is a bit more educated and a bit more thoroughly thought out than my impulse buys, but I'm very excited for you. And so when is delivery?
It's supposed to be sometime the end of January. They said end of January, early February. But Dick, that's the whole experience of riding a motorcycle is the passion, the impulse, that's all combined. That's what makes the whole purchase of a motorcycle that we all thrill for. We all go into a new dealership, and it's like eye candy. So it's a great thing. At 52, I wish actually 53 tomorrow. But
happy birthday!
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
I wish I did it 10 years ago, but at least I have many years ahead of me to enjoy it.
Yeah, it'll be great. And so, are they going to have you down to the dealership, or are they delivering it?
No, I'm sure I'll have to go pick it up.
Yeah. Good.
That's what I want, because I want to
starting
vlog
from your
at home.
Driveway and ending up at your driveway is going to be a bit different than starting at the dealership and going through Philly on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going to go over the Ben Franklin Bridge back to Jersey? Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, John, I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I look forward to hearing more about it and watching some of your vlogs. And if you need anything, let me know. I'm happy to help with any advice or anything. But
Excellent.
it's and if I ever get stateside when injections and flights become a reality again, I will certainly try and swing down your way and we'll go for a ride.
That would be amazing. Great. Yeah. Well, great to meet you, Dick, and glad I'll continue the viewing and stay healthy.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone also who's made comments. I've seen comments ticking on the side. I don't know if you could see it on your screen, but we've had some good comments and people talking with each other. So I really appreciate the comments and if you want to reach out to John and find out what his YouTube will be, drop me an email or a comment in this video, and when his YouTube goes live, I will certainly give him a shout out and give everyone the link to it because we're all interested in hearing what John's experience will be. And I'm not one for plugging, but if you are not a subscriber, please feel free to click the subscribe button and share with your friends. And with that, I will sign off and wish you all happy riding and a happy holiday. And John, I wish you healthy and happy recovery. And
Thanks.
Let me know that you're getting well and you're
I
staying
am
on the path to recovery.
I am.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.